Sounds good.
Okay. Today we want to have you guys to join the call more like a design call, how we can get make mUzima to be able to capture and process household data as part of the FV CDSS program. One of our goal is to be able to use mUzima for the PhD program. So right now they're using ODK, and I think Sam and Win have quite a lot of experience in that part. And I just wonder if Win and Sam may be helping us to lead these discussions and just to tell us how the current setup in PhD is working in terms of like capturing and processing household data, and then we can move into what needs to be done in mUzima. Would that be okay?
Sure.
Sounds good. Hey, Win and Sam.
I don't know much about PHCT Ada. Probably Sam because he was the developer for PHCT before.
Sam, you're on mute. I just want are you in position to talk right now, or it'll be good for you just to give us like a brief overview how household data currently how it's been captured as well as being processed in PHCT. Okay.
Hello?
I think Sam is going to get a microphone instead of give him a minute.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi Sam, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Ada. I think what I can give is a brief overview of how mUzima does its, not mUzima, ODK does household, or the way we did it at PHCT. So basically what we did is create a form which has a household section, and then it had an individual section which was a repeating section. So that would allow us to have a single XML which has household data and one or more individuals within the same XML. When that XML is submitted to the server side, the first process was to process the household and create a household on the OpenMRS server, and then process every individual in that household and link those individuals to the newly created household. So basically that was the very simple algorithm that we used.
Do you guys think we should mimic similar approach that for mUzima as well, since it's working for Xforms right now?
Sam, let me just repeat back to you what I think I understood, which is that basically you just create new patients and then you create a relationship between them using some person attribute. Is that what ends up happening?
Yes and no. So basically we were creating a household object on the server side.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then we had a table which we call household individual, and basically that was like just creating a relationship between a household and patients.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there a reason why you did it? Why you? I mean, I can see usefulness, but why not just do it as a person attribute? Why have another table?
Yeah, so basically, I think the first time we were doing it, I think that was in 2009, we were using the idea that we would have a separate household system in future.
Okay.
And so we're just doing something which was supposed to be temporary, then hoping to have a neater way of doing it. That may maybe have changed since I left Ampath, so maybe what I have is not the most up-to-date way.
I don't think anybody's worked on this since you left, so
Yeah.
you're still setting the standard, and unless Burke ends up with has other ideas.
Okay, I think then that's how it works.
Okay. Well, Ada, it's hard. When it comes to like a database model, Burke is certainly the expert. It's hard to have this discussion without his input.
Yeah, Brock is in now.
I wish he was on the call.
Oh, thank you. It's good I didn't. Burke, what do you think?
I agree with everything.
So how should we be modeling households?
Well, there's kind of the now vision and the longer term vision. I would like to see, and there's probably maybe a little bit of a compromise potential between the two. I would like to see eventually that we have cohort observations and cohort encounters in the data model, which would raise not just household, but any kind of grouping and being able to take observations about a group and have encounters with a group would make that a first-class citizen and open him arrest. I think we'll have to kind of step our way there. We have what Jonah created for the household module, and he did a pretty decent job of making household is fairly flexible and can be defined. So is the goal to not use the household model and kind of reinvent it, or was the goal to try to get data that's being collected by mUzima into, because I thought at one point we had mobile forms delivering data into the household module.
So, Ada, who's leading this right now? Because who's leading the PHCT stuff? Because
FL.
What's that?
FL and Banco Edge. I've reached out to both of them separately, but I haven't really got any response from them.
Okay. But I mean, when you organized this call, what was the impetus for it?
So we want to understand better about the concept of the how PHCT capture the household data and how it's being processed, and then the ultimate goal actually is we want to do the same thing in mUzima. And I know that the reason we include you, JJ, is that I know that you also work on the mobile app and also take more active role in the informatics. So I think it's important to include you in case anything like you have other like opinion or suggestions that about the direction we go.
I appreciate being included because the thing that I wanted to add to this conversation is what Burke just raised, which is that at this moment in time, Ampath is starting to do a lot of work with groups, which it would be nice to be able to, whatever changes we start thinking about and maybe implementing or developing right now, it'd be nice to broaden our concept of what a household was to be more generous, so that we could start taking data on these groups. Because I know with the Busia pilot going on right now, I've been asked to make sure that we can somehow start collecting data from from the GISE and HIV groups, and then possibly the maternity groups as well. So in my mind, this would be, if I'm not sure what our resources are, but if we have the capacity to go forward with what Burke was suggesting, I would love to be able to begin that process right now.
I think it's good for us on this call to list out all the possible, options, and then from there we can, iron out whether, what kind of resources and in terms of like timeline and efforts for each of the options, and then we can just decide which one is best for the current situation or long term and short term. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I believe the module, I know Jonah modeled it so that there isn't one definition of a household, that you can have multiple definitions of, household basically as a type, and then collect data against that. So if you had different programs, because we knew that there different programs had different definitions of what a household was. So he went that far, and I believe they were collecting data into it. So I would think the quickest short-term thing would be to get data into his existing household module. The next step would be to say, in that module or in what we're sending or how we're assuming what we send it, can we start to break down the notion that it has to be a household? We can use it as a household, but start making the assumption that it's a group of people, not just a household. And then that would open the door that when and if we can get that cohort actually working at a level that it can support households, that switching over would be not that painful. I don't see that AMPATH taking on introducing cohort observations and cohort encounters. I don't know if we're going to pull that off.
Okay. Could that be a Google Summer of Code project, Burke, or is that a more extensive?
It's possible to I think if we got it down to what could be a month or two of effort for a good programmer, introducing the notion, basically refactoring the household module to be kind of a cohort module, that might be achievable. We probably have to talk to some of the other folks like Mike Seaton in particular about what assumptions there are about cohorts right now. I wouldn't want to set up a Google Summer of Code student for something that was set up for failure.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at Jonah's wiki page right now and looking at the data model, which is quite extensive actually. I mean, basically he's recreated the OpenMRS data model to but for households instead of patients.
Actually, yeah, it should be. Yeah, it's households instead of patients. So there are observations of households and there's encounters for households.
Yeah, and there's locations, membership, attributes. Okay. So it seems like I don't know if there's I don't know how you get data in and out. It'd be nice if there was a REST web service for this, but it sounds like the question right now is, can we use this module, or are we using this module? How about that question? Does anybody know?
Jonathan?
Yes.
Jonathan, we are using that module, although not all those tables are being used at this point. Basically, for like PHCT, when you look at the mobile format, we introduced a number of tables that also handles the household data, related data. So basically, as we look at that, we may be using maybe 2 tables from those that are there. And currently, I'm not so sure whether there are any other programs that are using it. So we have to look at it and then also look at what other tables were introduced through the mobile form entry that are handling that household related information.
So, Alpha, you guys are actually currently using the household module for PHCT, correct?
Yes, we are using it for PCT. I think there is a table the relationship, the household members, I think, is being handled through the household module, but a number of other things have been done through the other modules.
So, is there any issues that you guys run into to use two method? Why you guys using two method? Why some use the household module, one's not?
Come up again. I didn't really get your
So
question.
I'm not sure if I understand you correctly. Are you saying that some data got processed through the household module for the household information? Some got stored in the household module, but then some other household information are not. Did I get it right?
Yeah, okay, I'm coming from a different perspective. I'm coming from a user, looking at how the PHCT is using it. So basically, I know we are storing some information in other tables, but we are also pulling some information from the household module, but not much. Not much is being done through the household module. Because in the ODK forms that we have is actually the ones that are collecting the data for PHCT, the household related data for PHCT. And this data is processed through mobile form entry, and most of it is being saved through tables that were created under mobile form entry.
I see.
So there's two key parts to the household. One is making the relationships between people that are in a household, and the other part is collecting household level data, like the roof or how many cows or information that applies to the household. So the question would be: is the household module being used for one of those features or the other, or are they using a little bit of each of those because there's another module that's also doing the same thing?
So Win, do you want to talk about your comments on the chat about the form, streamline the form?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about, because we already have the household module, and I think what we don't have in mUzima is how we can replicate the approach that we have in ODK currently, and then there's the, I think, email discussion about using HTML form and then using Angular. So JJ, mUzima, and HTML form, JJ's application, we all can share the same common form approach. So I think we can also discuss about that, because there's a talk of using like Angular or something to do this. This way we have a common approach of developing forms, and then we can apply the same approach to household and other potential forms that we need to create in the future. I think I prefer it that way rather than mUzima trying to create the household form and then in the future we need to do it differently because of this talk of using HTML form. I don't know. I mean, it's just an open for discussion, I guess.
Yeah, there's a couple different decisions or paths that are being conflated in there, because one is in terms of the basic form technology, just in terms of how do you render a form and collect it, and I think that's part of it, is kind of just what are the commonalities, or can we come up with a common representation of how to describe a form? That's I think one discussion. Then the discussion around household is, I think, more about about how do we say that the subject of the form is not just going to be an encounter for a patient. I think a lot of the assumption right now in mUzima is that you're selecting a patient and entering information about a patient. Jonathan's code may be similar, that you're picking a patient and doing information about a patient, and the significant difference for household information is that you break that apart and you say, no, actually we're going to collect information about a household, and then we'll get to the patient. So there's kind of a general kind of workflow, or what's the subject for a form. There's that question. And then another kind of piece related to that, I think, is that to-do would be, assuming we don't want everything to be trying to continue to use X forms as a way of getting data in, that we'll want to take the household. One task for us would be to take the household module and create resources, REST resources for it, so that mUzima and Jonathan's tools can interact with households through REST.
Yeah, so I was about to say that myself. I mean, I was trying to look to see if there is REST web services resources associated with it. It doesn't look like it.
Household module was done before we had the REST module.
So, okay. So, we could say we're going to build, REST services for this module, but I would suspect that's not a non-trivial amount of time that will be dedicated to that, and then it begs the question of whether is this going to be our long-term solution? Because if it's not, should we be building resources for the module that is the long-term solution?
Yeah,
I guess we're just in a jam.
Yeah, I think having the ultimately, we definitely want a RESTful interface to it. That's how you're going to want to interact with it. But having a way to collect the data, and having a way to store the data, is kind of a moot point if we don't have a way to collect the data. If I had to prioritize, I would prioritize how do you get to where we can collect the data in a way that we have household data, and then all the people within that household may have information about each of them. How can we create that model in a way that could work in mUzima, could work with your tooling? Then whatever model comes out of that, whatever data we get out of that, we can jury-rig, if we need to, a way to send that through X forms for the time being, and worry about making it RESTful later.
Okay. I mean,
I think the fundamental piece is it possible, or could we see a path where in mUzima, or when you're making your Angular forms, where the subject is not an encounter for a patient, but rather is you're filling out a form with some data in it.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I've been thinking about this is what does the REST object look like that I have to post, right? And then I'm building the Angular script to produce that thing. Right now, it produces one, very specifically for what an encounter is expecting. But it's not such a big deal just to build a different, a different form entry module for household level data that builds it to it, but it also presupposes that there's something to post to.
Yep. But that could be jury-rigged if necessary for the short term.
I've never built it myself, so I don't know. Is it a lot of time to build RESTful services for the household module?
Depends on the experience of the developer, but most modules, there is a way for modules to essentially leverage the REST module and declare resources, so they don't have to do it from the ground up. There's, you can, the REST module is by design not just delivering the core objects, but also designed to allow other modules to extend it.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, does it sound like that's the way forward then? Is make that RESTful?
Well, that would make a RESTful. You could expose households in a RESTful way, but that doesn't solve the client problem, which is probably the bigger problem. Because if we jury-rigged a fake server side and got the clients so that they could collect household data, we could dump it into throw it into a database and worry about creating scripts to move it into AMRS for now. I mean, I don't know that exposing we have two issues. One is exposing the data, but the other is also how are we going to collect data again, and it's not just asking for more patient information.
I mean, I would definitely prefer against just throwing it in some database and figuring out later how to get it out. I mean, I'm just looking at this model now, and it's I see that he wrote this a while ago because it doesn't look, it's mirroring. Sorry, Jonah is mirroring the old whatever the version before 1.9 was data model. So it's not even kind of.
Yeah, 1.8.
Yeah.
I think it's about time we have the dev call.
Yeah. Sorry, guys, to cut you short. I think we run over time. I'll summarize what we discussed, and then we're likely to have another discussion during the Friday mUzima weekly call, and then we will share more information with the team.
Yeah, I would aim toward thinking about how would it work if you wanted to collect information about something else. We can say, okay, it's a household, but I would probably, to Wynn's point, go broader and say, let's say we're going to collect data for a form, and then as a side effect of that, maybe we want to collect some patient data. So is there a way without, that you can leverage the patient encounter tooling that's already exists, but then to be able to collect data in a different way about something else, and say, okay, well, I'm collecting data about a group of people, and I want to then loop through and collect specific data about each person. I don't know. I thinking about how that workflow would work within this, on the device, and how the forms might be structured and what data might get sent.
I mean, Berg, my experience so far with this stuff is that it's actually very easy and fast to build the tools just to do entry. I feel like what's been starting to take me a lot more time is how to build tools to edit old encounters or to save drafts that are editable. So I'm not. Just because in the end all you're doing is building a JSON object that meets the criteria of the thing that's waiting for it, which isn't that challenging.
Well, I mean, it is from the standpoint of what's so you can create it, but what does that mean? Someone goes in, and are you replacing what you've done already? You creating a form that is going to be everything about a household and everything about every patient, or are you going to create some mechanism where you collect information about a household and then jump to your patient feed? Like, what is the workflow like for someone using it? All right.
I guess I was thinking that we were going to keep these data not within the patient record. It sounds like that's a different question. I mean, that's an unanswered question in and of itself.
No, that's answered, I think. The household data when you go and talk to a household, generally there's questions like what type of roof do you have or how many cows, but then there's also specific questions about each patient. So it's a combination of here's a household and information at the household level, and here's the relationships with all the people in the household, and then here's data about each person in that household. The last piece goes into the medical record for each patient. The household module collects the data about the household, and those relationships of how people are related in a household. So we're collecting all of that.
I see. But so
yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
I
want to echo what Burke is saying, is that we really do need a more generalized way of collecting information about groups, and it seems like this is our opportunity to do so. And if we are, it doesn't. I don't get the impression right now. Actually, maybe I'm wrong. What's the urgency of switching to mUzima? I mean, is it that the issue before about patient communication? Like, do we have 6 months to figure this out, or do we have to figure this out next month?
How about we take it, discuss with Martin through email? How about that?
Okay.
Oh, sure. Thanks, guys. We'll chat again. Thanks.
All right. Bye.